Hey, today, like I said in the previous video, I will read you a short story, but before I do that, I would like to say a couple of words about Halloween and its origin. October 31st is when a lot of countries celebrate Halloween. This name derives from the fact that in the Christian calendar it occurs the day before All Saints or All Hallows Day, this evening becoming a holy or hallowed eve. It was the last night of the old year according to the ancient calendar of the Celts. The new year was believed to begin, and this date was also considered to be the beginning of the winter period. This was around 3,000 years ago. And this last night of the year was the night of the god of death, a pagan god, Samhain. On this night, it was said that the witches, warlocks, goblins, and evil spirits walked on earth and devoted themselves to wicked delights and revels. Also, the good fairies made their appearance at this time, but only from the hour of dusk till midnight. This night has always been considered a particularly auspicious occasion for supernatural experiments, and it still is to this day. Celts believed that the presence of the otherworldly spirits made it easier for their priests or druids to make predictions about the future. Another old Celtic custom was to light great bonfires on Halloween, and after these had burned out, it was custom to make a circle of ashes of each fire. Within this circle and near the edge, each member of the various families that had helped to make a fire would place a pebble. If on the next day any stone was out of its place or had been damaged, it was held to be indication that the one to whom the stone belonged would die within 12 months. It was a morbid superstition which does not find much favor in modern times, but manifestations which are connected with the affairs of the heart and love are more sought after on the eve of All Hallows. And here is one of the spells which can be casted only on Halloween. It is called bobbing for apples, as no Halloween was complete without an apple bob. So each member of the party is given an apple, from which a small piece has been cut out and into which a fortune written on a slip of paper has been inserted. Then the apples are thrown into a large tub of water, and the people are invited to duck their heads and retrieve an apple with their mouths. Once doing that, they would draw the slip of paper and read their fortune. These fortunes, which must be brief, were of love nature and would be something like, "You're being deceived by your lover," or "Your loved one will be beautiful and masterful." Crystals that are associated with this night are obsidian, black tourmaline, smoky quartz, carnelian, garnet, and amethyst. Now let's move on to the second part of this video. I will share or read an incomplete story by Howard Phillips Lovecraft, commonly known as H.P. Lovecraft. This story, thought to have been written in late 1933, was published in 1938 in the journal Leaves. It is titled The Book. My memories are very confused. There is even much doubt as to where they begin. For at times I feel appalling vistas of years stretching behind me, while at other times it seems as if the present moment were an isolated point in a grey, formless infinity. I am not even certain how am I communicating this message. While I know I am speaking, I have a vague impression that some strange and perhaps terrible mediation will be needed to bear what I say to the points where I wish to be heard. My identity, too, is bewilderingly cloudy. I seem to have suffered a great shock, perhaps from some utterly monstrous outgrowth of my cycles of unique, incredible experience. These cycles of experience, of course, all stem from that worm-riddled book. I remember when I found it in a dimly lighted place near the black, oily river where the mists always swirl. That place was very old, and the ceiling-high shelves full of rotting volumes reached back endlessly through windowless inner rooms and alcoves. There were besides great formless heaps of books on the floor and in crude bins, and it was in one of these heaps that I found a thing. I never learned its title, for the early pages were missing, but it fell open toward the end and gave me a glimpse of something which sent my senses reeling. There was a formula, a sort of list of things to say and do, which I recognized as something black and forbidden, something which I had read of before in furtive paragraphs of mist abhorrence and fascination penned by those strange ancient delvers into the universe's guarded secrets whose decaying texts I loved to absorb. It was a key, a guide to certain gateways and transitions of which mystics have dreamed and whispered since the race was young, and which led to freedoms and discoveries beyond the three dimensions and realms of life and matter that we know. Not for centuries had any man recalled its vital substance or known where to find it, But this book was very old indeed. No printing press, but the hand of some half-crazed monk had traced these ominous Latin phrases in uncials of awesome antiquity. I remember how the old man leered and tittered and made a curious sign with his hand when I bore it away. He had refused to take pay for it, and only long afterward did I guess why. As I hurried home through those narrow, winding, mist-choked waterfront streets, I had a frightful impression of being stealthily followed by softly padding feet. The centuried, tottering houses on both sides seemed alive with a fresh and morbid malignity, as if some hitherto closed channel of evil understanding had abruptly been opened. I felt that those walls and overhanging gables of mildewed brick and fungus plaster and timber, with fishy, eye-like, diamond-paned windows that leered, could hardly desist from advancing and crushing me. Yet I had read only the last fragment of that blasphemous rune before closing the book and bringing it away. I remember how I read the book at last, white-faced and locked in the attic room that I had long devoted to strange searchings. The great house was very still, for I had not gone up till after midnight. I think I had a family then, though the details are very uncertain, and I know there were many servants. Just what the year was I cannot say, for since then I have known many ages and dimensions, and have had all of my notions of time dissolved and refashioned. It was by the light of candles that I read. I recalled the relentless dripping of the wax, and there were chimes that came every now and then from distant belfries. I seemed to keep track of those chimes with a peculiar intentness, as if I feared to hear some very remote, intruding note among them. Then came the first scratching and fumbling at the dormer window that looked out high above the other roofs of the city. It came as I droned aloud the ninth verse of that primal lay, and I knew amidst my shudders what it meant. For he who passes the gateways always wins a shadow, and never again can he be alone. I had evoked, and the book was indeed all I had suspected. That night I passed the gateway to a vortex of twisted time and vision, and when morning found me in the attic room, I saw in the walls and shelves and fittings that which I had never seen before. Nor could I ever after see the world as I had known it. Mixed with the present scene was always a little of the past and a little of the future, and every once familiar object loomed alien in the new perspective brought by my widened sight. From then on I walked in a fantastic dream of unknown and half-known shapes, and with each new gateway crossed, the less plainly could I recognize the things of the narrow sphere to which I had so long been bound. What I saw about me no one else saw, and I grew doubly silent and aloof lest I be thought mad. Dogs had a fear of me, for they felt the outside shadow which never left my side. But still I read more, in hidden, forgotten books and scrolls to which my new vision led me, and pushed through fresh gateways of space and being and life patterns toward the core of the unknown cosmos. I remember the night I made the 5 concentric circles of fire on the floor, and stood in the innermost one chanting that monstrous litany the messenger from Tartary had brought. The walls melted away, and I was swept by a black wind through gulfs of fathomless gray with the needle-like pinnacles of unknown mountains miles below me. After a while there was utter blackness, and then the light of myriad stars forming strange alien constellations. Finally, I saw a green-lit plain far below me, and discerned on it the twisted towers of a city built in no fashion I had ever known or read of or dreamed of. As I floated closer to the city, I saw a great square building of stone in an open space, and felt a hideous fear clutching at me. I screamed and struggled, and after a blankness was again in my attic room, sprawled flat over the 5 phosphorescent circles on the floor. In that night's wandering, there was no more of strangeness than in many a former night's wandering. But there was more of a terror because I knew I was closer to those outside gulfs and worlds than I had ever been before. Thereafter I was more cautious with my incantations, for I had no wish to be cut off from my body and from the earth in unknown abysses whence I could never return. Lovecraft during his lifetime did not have a large following or readership. However, he influenced and inspired generations of writers and is considered to be one of the great fathers of modern horror. The unfinished nature of the short story I just read might be somewhat frustrating, yet it opens up new avenues for thought and creativity if you embrace it and let your imagination soar. Although this particular piece isn't among his most famous works, it stands out as one of my personal favorites. On another note, I would like to mention and recommend a TV show and a somewhat recent movie. One of my all time favorites is Penny Dreadful, which has 3 seasons and each one is equally good. It ended quite abruptly, leaving viewers wanting more, a great way to end a show, in my opinion. As for the movie, I recently watched The Pope's Exorcist with Russell Crowe. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Crowe's role, his Italian and Latin, were very well done. And this is all I have to share with you today. I'm curious about your favorite shows, movies, authors, and books. Have you explored Lovecraft's works? Which stories resonate with you? Thank you for joining me today, and I hope you enjoy a delightful and spooky night. Looking forward to seeing you next week. Bye.